Okay. Hello, everyone. Good to be back. I am in Iceland at the moment, so trying to figure out all of my setup as best I can. So do please bear with me. Good to be back with you after a week away. Last week I was in in Germany and Poland last week, and I went to the Expo Lingua event and also another event for people who are in this language learning sphere, promoting language learning and doing some great things, and they were all linked to on my Cornish video, because obviously when you go to these events you get everyone to say something in Cornish, which for me was a lot of fun. Everyone got really into it and was super positive, and that's really, really nice to see. And of course, having many more followers than I do, I could guarantee them at least a few hundred followers, followers for views for the Cornish video, which obviously is my little kind of joke, but fun nonetheless. And for the Cornish language community, actually, it's very, very nice to see people caring about the language and about trying to say something in Cornish, because that was the whole point of last week with Speak Cornish Week. And I absolutely enjoyed making videos every single day. It wasn't always easy, I've got to be honest, but it was a lot of fun to do, and I would definitely do more of that kind of stuff. Let me know if there are those kinds of things that you would like me to do that you think would be useful for your language learning journey, and I'd be happy to see how I can accommodate that. So this week I decided on a topic of choice, language learning choices, and a number of you were actually a bit puzzled by this reason, this choice of topic. I got a few people respond. Not many of you did, though. This week, the responses were about choosing which language, and also other comments were about like choosing materials and choosing, sort of what to do and whether to do it. And that's really, it is an important part. So choice is super, super important. So in the sessions that I run for language learning therapy, we talk a lot about our choices and our situation. And we do this because, look, not everything's even or the same all the way through our lives. And so there are ups and there are downs. There are things that change, things that go well sometimes, less well other times. And we've got to be quite careful as to what we choose to do with our time. So choice becomes this really important thing, and it does become a choice. So, many people ask, can I learn more than one language at one time? And the answer is yes. But the choice you make by learning more than one language actually impacts your ability to learn that language and any other languages that you are learning or have learned and wish to continue speaking and using. And the reason I say that is because we have a finite amount of time during our waking hours. And whilst we're awake, we have to work, we have to eat, we have to be with friends or family, or we have to do certain things just to exist as human beings. So when we start dividing up the day into smaller and smaller slots, it means that do we have enough time to relax, to just sort of sit down and be in front of the TV or a film, or go out for a walk, or whatever else we do to sort of decompress and to relax and to allow our bodies and our minds to regenerate after a busy week at work, or even a busy day at work. These things all mean that we are making choices, and this is why choices are important. And the reason as well why they're important is that very often I see people come to me and expect to be able to add languages, but also the hope is that, or the disappointment is that the results are not the same for every single language. Now, for some people that might seem like, oh yeah, of course it's not going to be the same. Some of you might be thinking, well, what are you talking about? The thing is that we can understand that on some level. But what happens, and I am guilty of this myself, is I am very conscious of this, but still, when I don't achieve this superhuman thing of learning every single language really quickly and really well, and I also feel disappointed. And I have to go back and think, well, wait a minute, I'm trying to do something actually quite difficult. And I like it. I've chosen to watch this live stream. That is a very good choice, I think. Hello. So yeah, I think that when we make these choices, sometimes, yes, we are aware of the fact that there are choices involved and there's a give and a take when we learn new things and we add to our workload. But sometimes what we don't do is we don't adjust in our minds and retain in a kind of in a really obvious way, actually, how does this affect the other things I was doing as well? Because if you're adding more to your workload, not only when you study languages, it's not like, for example, when you say, okay, well, I do have an extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes, so I will also, as well as knitting a jumper, I will also use my time to paint a picture. Okay, those two things, when you do them, you are focused and concentrated on those things when you do them. Okay, this is where languages are quite different, because with languages and learning of a language, you need the practice and you need to internalize the vocabulary and the grammar, and you need to get that practice in. What happens is, when you learn more than one language, not only are you doing it at the time when you're studying, but also when you go away from there, from wherever you study, you need to be thinking about the language. So unlike knitting a sweater and painting something nice, the scenery around you, where you have two things that go on and you can watch them develop over time nicely, and every time you go back, you add to whatever it is you're doing. You make the sweater bigger, you add in some birds or the sky. When you do that with a language, unfortunately, it doesn't just stay there and you add to it. You have to keep revising what you've been doing. You have to keep using what you've been doing. And the adding on needs to be something that you do away from the study time too. So it's not just I do this during my study sessions. It's something that you do again and again and again and again and again, and you do it beyond the study session. So actually what happens with language learning is, if you're doing it effectively and you want to speak the language and you want to get the quickest results possible, you need to be thinking about the language a lot. And of course, your thought processes, you can only do that to a certain degree with a certain number of things. You can't be thinking about every single thing at once and giving it its proper attention. And this is why with languages, the choice of adding a language or which language you study, even if it's just one language that you're studying, this is the choice you make. Are you going to make a choice where you really make this part of your life and you really do this, you really go for this? Or are you just going to do this as like a picture that you try and add bits to, and then when you go back to the picture, expect that some of the colour is gone. Expect that the hills have faded into the background. Expect that the sky is no longer as blue as it was, it's gone grey. And you need to add some more blue to get it back to where it was. That's what language learning is about. It's this, the picture doesn't stay as it was when you left it, like when you paint a real picture. So, when I talk about choice, it's choices like that, of study plans, of how it affects you, about how you actually internalize it, how you make it part of your life. They're the choices. And adjusting when you make new choices, what does that mean for the other choices you've already made? Because there is an impact. It's not like a sweater that you knit and a painting that you paint, where you can watch the two develop in the same way with just because you've got an extra half an hour a day that you can dedicate to the painting. With languages, the painting would affect the knitting and the knitting would affect the painting, because you're also thinking about those activities away from the actual work itself of study. And that's what happens with languages. The other thing that I find interesting is language choice. So which language are you going to learn? And I get many people ask me, which language should I learn? Should I learn Swahili? Should I learn Thai? Should I learn French? Should I learn German? Which language should I learn next? These questions and these choices are very individual and very specific to you. Now, to answer that question, I need to ask you more questions. So if you have that thought in your head of what are you going to learn and how are you going to do it and what you're going to do, I think the first thing to do is to come back to you with the question, why? Why that or those languages? Why do you want to learn them? Is there a specific reason that you want to learn them? Is it because you are confronted by those languages in your normal life? Are they languages you hear naturally? Are they languages you're going to have to make a big effort to come into contact with? Or are there other reasons? Family ties, friendships? It can be many reasons why you want to learn a language. The one truth I can give you is that if you can't internalize and make that language part of your day-to-day existence in a very natural way, it's going to be a tough road. And the reason why it's going to be a tough road is because the easiest things to learn and to do are the ones that just happen to you. Now, if you love K-pop and you love K-drama and you naturally gravitate towards those things online, learn Korean, absolutely, because you're getting free practice all the time and it's in your thoughts all the time, and it will go much more quickly than, say, choosing another language that you don't have contact with. If, though, you love Tolstoy and you want to read the original and you are absolutely enamored with, Russian literature, then do choose Russian. Why not? It's got some beautiful language and literature attached to it that you can explore. Is it that, for example, you're Muslim and you want to read the Quran, you want to interact with other Muslims around the world, and therefore learning Arabic and maybe Quranic Arabic? Is that a reason? Is that a motivation? Because these are all very good motivations to learn a language. These are all choices that you make that allow you to more easily learn the language because of what they are and what they mean in your life. In my life, it's always been like that I've chosen languages that I come into contact with. I mean, I never imagined, and someone wrote on Twitter the other day, which languages would you never have imagined that you'd learn? And I never thought of learning Macedonian, but here I am with that as my home language. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know who's going to become important or what's going to become important in your life. But things happen in life and they help us to make these choices. And moving with the current and trying to accept what's going on and moving with it is a lot easier than being the salmon and jumping upstream against the current. Because the salmon has a very tough job. And language learning you can be the salmon from time to time when you really want to do something and there's a good reason. It can be a salmon. But generally speaking, It's way easier to swim with the water and to explore the water as you move downstream than it is to try and go back upstream. Now, when I moved to the Balkans, naturally using languages like Turkish, like Greek, like Bulgarian, Serbian, Albanian, those languages are just part of my existence, and I can't imagine not having any of those languages now. They are languages that I hear on the streets, I hear in the media, I drive a few hours down the road and I am there. I'm in the place where they speak that language. And that's a very natural choice. Is it the choice that on paper, and I see lists of, people make lists of which languages I should learn? Okay, and it typically goes something like this: French, Spanish, German, Chinese, Arabic, Japanese, Swahili. There's always some sort of random mix of languages. But look, are all of these languages going to be in your day-to-day life? If they're not, and if they're not important to you, and this is the important thing, right? Are they important to you? Then are you barking up the wrong tree with learning them? And people often question, well, why would you learn Cornish? Someone wrote, why learn Cornish? And I was like, why not? I got the opportunity to study it. And when I get the opportunity to study a language, often I will take the opportunity and try it and see what that language becomes in my life. And that choice at that particular moment is a choice to try something new. I don't know always where that's going to lead. So when I get the follow-up question, do you want to be a C2 level in that language? Often my answer is, I have no idea. I don't even really know 100% what that means and why it would be necessary. But my gut reaction to learning any language is, I want to try it. I want to see how I get involved in communities in a natural way. With a language like Cornish, the Cornish language community has been very open and honest and kind and inviting and generous to me. And I can't imagine not learning it now. And I can't imagine stopping learning it at the moment. I don't know what it will be in the future. And I'm open to every option. I'm open to other options coming up as well. But at the moment, I'm very much invested in that. And that's a choice. It's a choice that makes no sense to some people, but makes an awful lot of sense to me. And sometimes your choices don't have to make sense to everyone else. So then you have a choice to listen to other voices, or the choice to listen to yourself more. Because other voices sometimes can demotivate us and make us think that what we're doing is silly, stupid, not a good use of our time. That doesn't matter. That really doesn't matter. What matters is that you do something that you find useful. And so from that point of view is where I work when it comes to language learning and when I come to choosing other languages. I find that languages choose me. And I think that once a language has chosen you, or you feel you've chosen it, then the other choices are things you have to consider. How much effort does it take for you to learn the language? How much effort does it take for you to get involved in the community? How much effort does it take for you to consume things in that language on a regular basis? Okay, so I can see that there are some issues on YouTube with the internet connection. I have no idea how it's playing for you on Instagram, and I'm sorry about that. It's I'm not at home at the moment. I am in Iceland, and obviously in Iceland it's not where I normally live. So I hope that this will work and that we will be able to continue the live streams whilst I'm here, and that we will be able to talk normally. Oh wow, please restart. I've got a number of issues here on YouTube and I'm not sure how to fix them, unfortunately. Okay. So, I will have a look at some questions that you have and feel free to write them. Let me know what you'd like to ask, things that are important to you, and I'd love to things are important to you, and I'm happy to answer the questions that you've got. Okay. Let me see. Instagram is working perfectly. Fantastic. YouTube doesn't seem to be good. Okay. I've asked people on YouTube to join me on Instagram so that they don't have to worry about it. And I can upload this recording onto YouTube later. Great. So, any questions? Let me see. I'm just going to go through. Hello, by the way, to everyone. Thank you for joining, and thank you for your patience as I talk through all of this stuff. I hope that my sort of ramblings and thoughts on choices made sense to you on some level, and that some of it hit home as well. I know it's really something that it sounds super, super simple, and actually, like years later, I still have to think very consciously about this issue. And that's why I wanted to really talk about it, because it's not so simple. Oh, it was nice to meet you in Expolingual meeting. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Nice to meet you too. We got the picture together, didn't we, on the second day? I think it was the second day that I got the picture with you. Yes, thank you for joining. Please do send me the photo, actually, if you can. Ne haber Richard? Ne kadar vaktim adı Türkçeyi öğrenmek? Ben sadece Makedonya'da Türkçe öğrendim. Sadece B1'e kadar öğrendim. Ama bundan sonra sadece merkezde insanlarla konuşuyorum ve evet, benim için çok iyi bir dildi. Çünkü Üsküp'te her zaman insan ve Türkler var ve onlar çok sık hiç İngilizce, hiç Makedonca konuşamaz ve bu yüzden ve Türkçesiz daha zor iletişim olaydı. Ama benim Türkçe şimdi iyice düşünüyorum ama %100 değil. Çünkü ben sadece B1'e kadar öğrendim ve ama sohbet için, muhabbet için yeterli değil mi? Ve her zaman televizyon, radyo, her şey Türkçe izliyorum ve anlıyorum ve ama burada Reykjavik'te Türkler yok. Hiç dönüşmedim. Ama Berlin'de çok Türkçe kullandım. Almanca ve Türkçe. Evet. Okay, let me see if I can see any more questions. What about those who don't use Instagram? Oh, dearie me, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do with the YouTube. The connection, unfortunately, normally is fine, but I'm not sure. You agree wholeheartedly. Also, oh my word, the fact that we want to learn a new language in and of itself is admirable. Yes, it is. I agree, absolutely. And even if we don't become fluent in our target language, knowing it on a basic level is absolutely, completely, 100% agree with that. Absolutely. So the cool thing about language learning, I think, generally is that it doesn't really matter how much you learn. Look, knowing hello, goodbye, thank you, please, numbers 1 to 10 is better than knowing nothing. I mean, I really do believe that quote that people talk about very often from Catalan is actually one of the truer quotes that I've ever read about language learning, and that is, language learning is the only thing worth learning, even badly. And I agree, because even with mistakes in your grammar, even with problems with pronunciation or words, and not knowing certain words, it's communication, and it's showing a respect for another country and another culture and another language. It's super important, because the people that are attached to those things appreciate it. And I know, because I do it all the time. I mean, I know there are people out there who say, oh, but it's a waste of time if you don't speak the language and people will just speak English. Absolutely not, no. People don't just speak English. I mean, even in a place like Iceland, my Icelandic is not going to be as good as many people that I meet here and Iceland that I speak to. But they do speak to me in Icelandic, and it's not an issue. In other countries, though, there is no other choice. I mean, in Turkey, very often, there is no other choice. In Poland, very often, there was no other choice. It was Polish, or Polish. I mean, these things, when people say, oh, you can't use a language if it's at a certain basic level. Of course you can. You're not going to sound like a poet in every language, but do we need to sound like a poet in every language? No, we don't. Sometimes it's not the goal. So I absolutely 100% agree with that. Yeah, really, really nice thing to say. Right, thank you for that. Consistency is key. Consistency is super important. It is really important when we're moving, we want to progress through the language. I'm going to caveat, though, the whole thing about consistency, and just say, if consistency becomes the thing that rules our lives, and we're going through a very difficult time, sometimes forcing ourselves to do it can be detrimental. There are times where it can be detrimental, because it can really crush our motivation to learn. And so I know it sounds kind of crazy for somebody who's a language learning enthusiast and someone who really wants people to learn languages, but I really believe and have witnessed firsthand people just breaking down and not being able to study at all. And when they add the pressure of, I've now failed to be consistent in my language learning, to that mix, it really feels even worse. And I don't want that for anyone. I really don't. I really, really don't want that for anyone. So, yes, consistency is really, really important. If you need to take time to look after yourself, if you're not there with your own mental and physical health, then we have nothing. So we need to look after ourselves, and the language isn't necessarily going anywhere. A bit of a revision will catch you up, but this is where choices and honesty, I think, are really important with ourselves. So choices also come into this kind of thing when our situation changes, and this is one of the things that crops up again and again in the language therapy sessions that I run. Let me see. I can't see this. 1 second. Zaszło, więc tu jestem. Aha, okay, great. Tu jestem. A tutaj. Instagramie. Tak, dobrze. Be a polyglot is good choice nowadays. What are the advantages? Is being a polyglot a good choice? Look, I mean, it's not... Obviously, I'm not going to pretend it's necessary to do what I've done with learning lots of languages. It's clearly not. It's a choice of you like it, you want that lifestyle of speaking a number of languages and using a number of languages for whatever purpose, whether it's reading, writing, listening, speaking, whatever it is. Are there lots of jobs where you can apply to speak, more than, say, 5 languages? No, not really. Are there any, for a number of people on the planet, maybe 5 is probably a max that people will realistically use. I haven't really come across many people that would need more than that and for their normal lives. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's a labour of love, just as anything else is. I mean, any knowledge that we have, there's certain bits of knowledge that we need to function, but there's always a choice, right, when it comes to learning anything. And the thing that it gives you, learning multiple languages, isn't just the sort of speaking to lots of people. It's the patterns and the links that you see between languages and language families. That's the thing that I think is quite special. And so, yeah, if you're interested in that, then fantastic, go for it. Studying etymology is great, but actually speaking the language and having a feel for it, it does kind of give a bit of a different flavour than just reading about it. I would say that's the thing, because when you speak a language, you're reminded of the etymologies and the links between peoples all the time. Yeah. That's for me the sort of one of the main things that drives me now. I love the links between languages, and that's why I like language projects, because they give me an insight into a new language. There we go. Let me see. How do you deal with particularly unsuccessful conversation in your target language? I'm finding it sometimes very discouraging. It can be, absolutely, be discouraging when you're not quite getting your point across. Frustration is part of it. It was when we learnt our first languages. We used to get super frustrated as children because we just don't remember it in the same way. But this is why you see children are unable to vocalize and externalize what's going on in their heads. Even some adults find it difficult, let alone children. And it can be deeply frustrating if you don't have the tools to do that. And because it's a different language, that can be the reason why. Particularly if you do have the tools in another language, like your first language or languages. What do? I have to just content myself with making mistakes, not being as precise as I want to be, and then making a mental note, or even writing a note down, or even asking the person I'm talking to, how do you say this word? Or I'm trying to describe this thing, trying to describe it, trying to sort of figure out what it would be that I would need to say, and making a note of that and learning how to say it. That is how I normally get around this kind of issue, to move forward and beyond the stumbling block. Salam. Let me see. Khalaises. Is that khalaises? Like khalaises. Wow, okay. Khalaises. Is that like hello in Kazakh, I'm guessing? But hello, salam. Nice to see you. Let me see. Çok güzel Türkçe konuşuyorsunuz. Teşekkür ederim. Let me see. Kako pasivno znanie pretvoriti u aktivno na najbrže način. Ne znam, to je bilo za mene, to je jedna stvar što sam radio na naškom jeziku. Ja sam bio u Makedoniji u Skopju, sam čitao samo svaki dan na naškom, na televiziji tam u Makedoniji s subtitrima, titulima na srpskom ili na hrvatskom, glavno. Ali nikad nisam govorio, nikad nisam ništa radio s jezikom. To je bilo samo tako televizija i još internet, socijalni mediji, ali nisam radio ništa. Ali jedan dan smo bili u Sarajevu za posao i sam morao tam raditi možda 4 mjeseca, nešto tako. I progovorio sam prvi put na naškom tamo, u Sarajevu. I sam morao koristiti taj jezik. Ali to je bilo jedna stvar što sam radio, u mojem životu, ali naravno to nije moguće za svi. Ja znam da je to lakše, može biti samo internetom, ako imaš s nekim govoriti tamo italki ili nešto tako da možeš da koristiš. Ali na istina nije to lako raditi. A koji jezik hoćeš govoriti ili koristiti tako na takav način? Je li to nešto s vrskima s drugim jezicima ili nešto tako što već znaš? Have you ever got negative feedback about learning language or joining communities? What have you... Okay, personally, family, marriage, connection to... No. No, I haven't been given negative feedback from the communities themselves, no. Some people don't like you learning certain languages because of their own beef with the language or with the community. But no, the people themselves, I don't think that's ever happened. People have questioned, why not many people learn our language, why are you learning it? But then when you explain it to them, they've been very nice and kind and encouraging, usually. I mean, people are generally quite nice when you speak to them, in person. So no, I've never had that kind of issue. People do often ask me about languages like Cornish because obviously it's a language that's spoken by fewer people than many other languages I could learn. But that doesn't really come from the community itself. In fact, quite the opposite. The community itself is extremely encouraging and helpful. Other languages, I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that at all. No. I love what you said about languages choosing you. Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly why I got into language learning in the first place. Really nice to hear that. Yeah, it's completely true. I mean, languages really do choose you. I mean, it tends to be opportunities as well, like specifically for projects that I've done over COVID times, for example. I mean, I studied some North Sami, I studied some Scots, I did some Scottish Gaelic, I've been doing Irish and Cornish and what else? Estonian, Swahili, all these projects that I got to study for just for fun, really, for enjoyment. I cherish them all, and I really enjoyed taking them on. And yeah, they chose me because it could have been other languages. I don't know what they could have been, but I was kind of open to it all. Last time I asked you about one of the more difficult languages you studied, but stopped studying for a while, at least to which You say it was Georgian, I think. Yep, Georgian is a language that I studied for a year at university in Sweden. I studied at the University of Malmö and online, but I studied at the University of Malmö, and I took Georgian for 2 semesters. At the end of 2 semesters, I didn't feel I could really say very much of anything in Georgian, and I didn't ever hear it. In fact, at that point in my life, I had never met a Georgian speaker. But I really liked the script. I thought the script was beautiful. This is why I also understand where choice is important. So I chose Georgian purely because I was intrigued by the script and I wanted to understand if I could learn the language and use it. And over a year, and I gave it a year of study, and never got to use it except for during class. And it kind of killed my motivation to continue, because if I were to continue with Georgian, I would need to really make a concerted effort to come into contact with the language, and that would be slightly difficult when you don't hear it ever. So that's kind of where I am with the whole choice thing as well. Okay. What's the one language that you've given up at some point but which you feel an urgent need to go back to and try to learn again? Arabic. Arabic. I absolutely adore Arabic. I've started learning Arabic. I started like 3 or 4 times in my life. It's like crazy, and the need to use it that was there went away, and I didn't get to progress. So Arabic is probably the language that, feels like it's evaded me for too long. And it's a beautiful language, and it's got so much stuff in there that relates to other languages I speak. There's a really nice link from Arabic to other languages, like Turkish and even Macedonian and Indonesian, that I've studied more and use. So yeah, I would say it would be that. Good question though, I like it. Você usa o método Natura em seus estudos de língua? Que coisa é isso? Método de Natura? Porque eu tenho livros, eu tenho cursos também para aprender uma língua, mas também para falar com a gente. Então, sim, de uma forma mais natural, assim, falando com a gente, usando a língua num ambiente mais natural, sim. Mas também tenho que estudar, tenho que fazer algumas coisas para aprender bem a gramática e o vocabulário, e como posso usar essas expressões para dizer é o que tenho eu na cabeça. Então, sim, é de uma forma natural, mas não é 100% natural, pois não. Então, não sei, é difícil dizer assim, mas acho que é assim, na minha cabeça. By the way, again, this is David. Check. Okay, thanks for the streaming, Richard. Thank you very much. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining. How many languages do you speak? This is the question that I think many of us in the language learning community fear the most. Well, not fear, but we don't know how to answer it very well, and I don't either. I let you decide. If you think that I don't speak your language or a language you speak, that's fine. I have zero pressure to sort of say. I've studied over 50 languages in my life. Do I speak 50 languages? No, absolutely not. Could I hold a decent conversation in 50 languages right now? No, absolutely not. There are languages that I use on a daily basis and work in and through on a daily basis. There are languages I have for friendships and family relationships that I use, again, on a daily basis. But these are the languages that I will use also in these streams. So yeah, absolutely. It's difficult to answer the question. I use 5 languages at home, and then maybe another 10 or so in like during the year around the area in the Balkans, and then maybe another 10 to 15 when I travel and for work. So yeah, maybe around there is what I would use. And they're not all the same level, of course. I mean, that would be insane. But they're kind of to a point where I can read things and they're functional, if you know what I mean. Let me see. Hola, Richo, sabemos que es el inglés universal y el chino y es más hablado en el mundo en caso de... Ok, a ver, de primer diploma... El primer idioma, ¿cuál crees que es realmente relevante? Pues turismo, el francés, alemán o italiano. ¿Y por qué? Gracias. Para el turismo, pues para mí, por ejemplo, pues uso bastante el español para el turismo, pero me estás preguntando lo de francés, alemán, italiano. Yo diría que hay muchos italianos por aquí, por ejemplo, en Reykjavik hay un montón de italianos hablando y siempre los escucho hablando italiano. Francés también, bastante, y alemanes también. Son los tres que sí, hay muchos turistas de estos países y hablan este idioma. Y sí, hay un número significante, sí, de todos esos países. Para mí, en general, pues para viajar, creo que el alemán sí que me ha ayudado bastante en mi vida para viajar, porque muchas veces la gente suele hablar alemán después del inglés. El francés también, pues en otros lugares. El italiano no tanto, pero hablando así con la gente, a veces en otros países sí que me ayuda para tener conversaciones, conectarme a otra persona para, no sé, para enterarme de algo. Y eso sí que los tres idiomas para mí son idiomas importantes. Pero los que más hablo, por ejemplo, serían el alemán y el francés, diría yo. Definitely got negative feedback. Learn language that's useful to your job. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. Wow, you got that feedback. I've had other people say that, but not the speakers of the language. I've had other people say that to me. Absolutely. Yeah, it's horrible feedback to get. What did you say about languages choosing you? I missed that. Basically, I said that in my life, languages, people come into my life and they tend to choose me. So I see an opportunity to learn and use a language in a natural way. So in that way, a language kind of chooses me. That's kind of the gist of what I said. Esta más. A ver. Conmigo el caso de de un tercer idioma, ¿cuál sería más relevante? ¿Francés, alemán o italiano? Ajá, para turismo. Para ti, en general, pues depende de dónde vives y tienes contacto con algunas personas de estos países, tienes algún contacto más natural, porque depende de tu lugar. Si estás, por ejemplo, en Latinoamérica, o si estás en España, o si estás en otro país, depende mucho de dónde vive el individuo, ¿no? Y para mí, por ejemplo, sí que depende mucho de mi hogar, dónde estoy, dónde vivo, dónde está mi gente, dónde están mis amigos. Así que depende mucho de esto. Así que si me puedes decir más información sobre esto, pues te voy a ayudar a decir lo que tienes que hacer si quieres. A ver, ¿dónde estamos? Hello, what's your native language? My native language is English. That's my first language. Still, after many years. Trenutno mi je fokus... sa kineskom. Ok. Što studiram sinologiju, međutim, mnogo pasivnog znanja imam za za svaki jezik koji učim. Znači, nije ni man. Kako da obično aktivirati oznanje pasivnije. Ok. Ali živješ na Balkanu, jel? Znači, za tebe mislim da je to internet je dosta važno. Ako imaš prijatelje tamo u internetu, to je velika pomoć s tim učenje jezika. Ja sam koristio za kinesko, ne govorim dobro ali kineski, ali sam naučio i sinologiju u fakulteti u Švedskoj. Ali moram kazati da je to za mene je bilo to jedna stvar samo internetom sam koristio. Ali ako imaš kontakt, može, na primjer, ako hoćeš, imamo i grupi tamo u Polyglot Conference, imamo tamo, to je mjesto koje koristimo za da govorimo na jezicima i to i vključuje i kineski jezik. Ako hoćeš, možeš napisati poruku i možemo biti u kontaktu i da mogu malo pomagati s ovom, ako hoćeš. Nije problem. Ima i na Twitteru ima i grupi tako da možeš i tako da pišeš samo. To je samo malo više samo pisati na jezikom, ali može i tako da govoriš ako hoćeš. I to je aktivacija jezika. Que português excelente. Obrigado, muito obrigado. Let me see. Okay. I've had a crush on Czech since 2017. I love it. I love how you put that. I've tried to learn it 3 times since. I've given up all 3 times. Can I get my head around it? I can't get my head around it, but I know I'll give it another try at some point. Yeah, it took me a while. Czech was my first Slavic language, and it took a while to get those Slavic roots in my head to be able to speak. So yeah, I mean, be encouraged by the fact that it is something that takes time. It's an investment and passion that takes practice and time and effort. And so it will get there. It's just, it takes time. You'll get there. Vivo en Ecuador. En Ecuador, pues, yo diría que depende de los turistas que ustedes tienen ahí en Ecuador. La verdad es que muchas veces si tienes más contacto con gente de algún país, no sé, o sea, Italia o Alemania, por ejemplo, pues eso sí que es una cosa, un factor muy importante. Así que hay gente de otros países donde vive en Ecuador, porque Ecuador sí que es un país bastante grande. Hay diferentes partes también, Quito, por ejemplo, y por la playa. Es otra cosa, ¿no? Así que depende también de tu situación y tu vida en Ecuador. Cuéntame, ¿cómo es la vida para ti? ¿Tienes contacto con algún otro país o otro idioma, por ejemplo, más que el otro? Porque eso sí que sería el idioma más fácil y más útil para ti en tu vida. Así que si son alemanes, por ejemplo, alemán. Si son italianos, italiano. Son portugueses, portugués. O brasileiro. Brasileños. A ver. Favorite language. Do I have a favorite language? Yeah, German is my favorite language. In terms of like speaking, I love German. I think German is beautiful. For sure. Let me see. Hello. Odrasla sam u zapadnoj Srbiji. Sada živim u Sloveniji. Aha, hvala vam puno. Počuvam. Hvala ti na tebe. Chwała zapytanie. Okay, cześć. That's nice of you. Like to see you, Jonathan. Great. Cześć, jak się masz, Jonathan? Nauczyłeś się polskiego teraz? Okay. What's your say on cognitive ability to grasp, acquire another language when we already speak one L1 plus 2 foreign languages versus when we speak one L1 and 4 foreign languages? It's different. Very good question. Possibly beyond the scope of the time I've got now to answer it completely. I'll give it a go though. Okay. This will be my last question, because otherwise I'll never finish. And I love to speak for hours, but with all the technical difficulties, I want to try and figure out what's gone on with YouTube. Anyway, yes. Are there differences? It depends on the so it depends on the target languages that you've learnt. So if you studied foreign languages that are connected to a new language, then absolutely it can help. Depends on quite a few factors though. So let's say, for example, one person's learnt German and French and speaks English, and they learn Dutch. It would depend on if they speak those languages and they learn Dutch, it's going to be way easier than someone who speaks, say, I don't know, French, Spanish. French is the first language, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and maybe English. So that's 5, right? So even that person with 3 languages and the person with 5 languages, I would hazard a guess that and kind of an educated guess, I guess, as well, that they're going to have an easier time with the 3 languages because of the types of languages they are, with 2 Germanic and French. They're going to have an easier job learning Dutch and Scandinavian languages, for example, than somebody who's just studied Romance languages, even if they do speak 5. So it would depend very much on the languages that they speak, because the whole grammatical terminology and the way the language is set up in your head, this whole scheme or for the language in your brain, I think it's easier when you have that plus the language as well, like as in the words, the lexicon as well in your brain. Whereas, let's say, for example, the same 2 people, that other person learning another Romance language may have an easier job of learning another Romance language. I say may simply because when you speak a number of languages from the same family and trying to learn another one in addition, sometimes it can be the straw that breaks the camel's back because it becomes super confusing. That also happens. I've seen that happen many, many times. So to get a passive understanding and a passive knowledge, yes. To get an active understanding and an active ability in the language, not necessarily. I know that's not exactly probably the answer you were after, but yeah, it's the truth as I see it, and because of as my experience has dictated to me over the years of watching people go through these torments, I guess, of learning languages. Okay, let me see if en Ecuador llegan muchos ingleses, también franceses, pero tengo entendido que los alemanes viajan y gastan más, ¿vale? Por viajes y tal. ¿Es cierto esto? Pues puede ser, no lo sé, la verdad es que nunca he estudiado esto para decirte 100% si es cierto o no. Al hablar inglés, los que van a viajar hasta Ecuador sí que van a hablar inglés bastante bien, pues suelen hablar mejor, porque es un viaje bastante lejos, bastante caro también para ellos. Así que suelen hablar más inglés, porque tienen más dinero para estudiar, para practicar el idioma. En Alemania en general, la verdad es que no tienden a hablar, aparte de en Berlín, por ejemplo, no tienden a hablar bien inglés, porque la tele y todo está todo en alemán. Así que depende mucho de la persona. Lo de los franceses, hablan francés y francés. Así que para utilizar el idioma, el francés, pero si quieres hablar alemán y tener fama en tu país entre los turistas alemanes, pues alemán. Pero depende de ti también. ¿Qué quieres hacer? ¿Te gusta más el alemán o el francés? ¿Y qué podrías utilizar ahora para aprender hasta un punto donde vas a poder trabajar en este idioma? Eso también es importante. Okay, thank you for agreeing on that, Jonathan. I really appreciate it for the languages. I'm going to have to disappear. I need to go for the evening, but I will be back next week. I'm going to see what I can do with YouTube, but I may just do Instagram if only Instagram is working. I may try YouTube again next week. If it's not working, then I will just do Instagram and then upload to YouTube afterwards. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for joining. And remember to drop a like. Remember to drop a follow. Remember, if you want to reach out, you've got my details. You can get in touch. You can get me on Patreon and all those places as well. And my coffee link is also there if you feel like treating me to an Icelandic coffee, which is like 15 times more expensive than one in Skopje. But anyway, I will enjoy your weekend, enjoy the rest of your week, and I will look forward to seeing you all this time next week. Take care. Bye bye.